Hey, it's a windy day to talk about mythology. Well, it seems like the gods of the wind are being playful right now, so let's get on with it. This is the part one of this book, Mythology. I've had a video for this introduction, but for this one, I want to talk about the part one, which is all about the gods, the creation, and the earliest heroes. So, the first part of this is their very weird or peculiar uh, ancestral tree, if you call it that way. So, what you have here at the very top are the primordial gods who are, or who basically have no beginning or no cause for their beginning outside of themselves, right? So here you can see Gaia or Earth and Uranus, heaven. So Gaia is basically one of the primordial gods, together with chaos and everybody else, like darkness or something. Um, they came into existence because they wanted to. So they thought, hey, you know what? I want to live and exist and, like, rule over everything else. And so they came to be. Simple as that. Now here's the twist. Uranus is considered a primordial god, but Uranus is basically like Gaia's son, so to speak. So here you have Gaia, who willed herself into existence and eventually created like a god that's also just somehow as powerful as her, and that's her son Uranus, and decided to marry her. I mean, marry him. Yeah, so Gaia married her own son, Uranus, who represents heaven. And together they had children called the Titans. And you've got Cronus, Rhea. I don't know how to read that one. That's in Greek. Coeus, and then Phoebe, and then Oceanus or Ocean, and then Tethya. And from those Titans, of course, we now have the gods. So from Cronus and Rhea, you've got Hestia, Pluto, Poseidon, Zeus, Hera, Demeter, and from them came down Athena, Ares, Hebe, Hephaestus, Persephone, and then the basically the whole ancestral tree. Here you've got Apollo coming from Zeus and Leto, Artemis as well, and all the other gods and goddesses. Very interesting things here. So you have Gaia, who married her son Uranus and created Titans. And then, of course, we all know the story of Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades killing their father, Cronus, basically dethroning him. And then you got Zeus, who gave birth to Athena without a wife, and Zeus and Hera giving birth to Ares and everybody else. Weird, huh? And it's also said that, well, here you find Aphrodite coming from Zeus and Dione. Yeah. So in this ancestral tree, you find Zeus here, and Zeus here, and Zeus there, and Zeus there. And that goes on for the rest of Greek mythology. So Zeus is just so busy creating offsprings. Now, that begs the question, why does he do that? Or why does he even need to do that when he could basically create Athena? Well, he did. He created Athena just by himself. There's no need for a wife. So is he doing that for pleasure? Same with Gaia. Gaia created Uranus just by herself. And then why marry her? Why marry him? If she could just create gods by herself. So the way I understand it is they might pair up with another god or another being, like humans, like what Zeus does, or nymphs. They might pair up to create a specific design. Although they can create a god by themselves, to achieve specific designs or configurations for a certain purpose of a god, they might pair up with somebody else. And later on, that was explained in the creation of Typhon, uh, one of Gaia's creation, which she created together with Tartarus and Aphrodite. Like a special configuration, an anti Olympian monster, basically. So, yep, that's their very unlikely family tree. Now let's take a good look at the other contents. Okay. So, yeah, you've got the whole explanation here. That's the one I shared with you earlier. Cronus, by the way, is Saturn in Roman mythology. So that's his name. And here you have the Olympians and their Roman names. So Zeus is Jupiter, Poseidon is Neptune, Hades is Pluto, Hestia is Vesta, so on. Hera is Juno, Ares is Mars, and their characters are not exactly the same. Athena is Minerva. In the Roman mythology, they worship Ares or Mars better than Athena or Minerva. For them, Minerva is treacherous, and Ares or Mars is honorable and more disciplined. And we'll get into that later. All right. Yep. Here's a portrait of Zeus looking at Mount Olympus. Now, Mount Olympus is quite controversial because some literature says it's at the top of the highest peak in Greece, but some literature also says that it's not within this domain or reality. Rather, it contains this reality within Mount Olympus, and that explains in one of the literatures here where Zeus said that he can hang the entire world in one of the he can hang the entire world, our world, in one of the chambers of Olympus to view. So that explains that Olympus is not a place in this reality, but this reality could be in Olympus itself. Also here, I learned that Zeus and his awful thunderbolt, as it is described, is more powerful than all the other gods combined. That's how powerful Zeus is. It's not the Zeus of Netflix or Zeus of Hollywood. That's the Zeus of Greek mythology right there. Yeah. And let's keep going. Here you have Hera. She's madly in love with Zeus. That's all I can say. And everybody else who gets Zeus' attention is an enemy in Hera's eyes. Yeah, basically. If there's one thing that she's good at, she's a model of like faithfulness within marriage. Like Hera never had any other affair with anybody else. She's just faithful to Zeus, for the good or for the bad. Yeah. She's all about Zeus. That's it. Poseidon is also quite powerful, of course, but he's not really the all-powerful in terms of the sea, because you've got the Titan Oceanus, and you've got all sorts of other elder gods and nymphs who are not necessarily under Poseidon's rule. But what I learned here is that next to Zeus, Poseidon is the strongest. And then you've got Hades that has a very short literature. But Hades is powerful not in terms of warfare, but in terms of administrative work. So Hades is the lord of the dead or the underworld, and that's an administrative power and domain. It's not about war, it's more like gatekeeping. It's a different reality in itself, and he's responsible for making sure that Tartarus does not come up and destroy the reality as we know it. So arguably, in that sense, I would personally say, in my opinion, that Hades is probably more powerful than Zeus, or the most powerful, because he's basically holding off Tartarus alone. But again, it's not warfare, it's not fighting, it's more of an administrative, organizational role that Hades plays. Then you have Phobos or Phoebus by Apollo. Now, here's something I also learned about him. Um, Apollo is the god of the light, the sun, and he's known as the god of truth as well, to whom ancient Greeks worshipped and asked for, prophecies and revelations of truths. So that's very far from the jerk, playboy, easy-go-lucky, you know, carefree Apollo that I've learned from Hollywood. I think they did Apollo dirty, but here Apollo is actually highly respectable, if not the most respectable, more than Zeus, because of how just and truthful Apollo is, and also, uh, yeah, that's basically it. And art poetry is also attributed to him. Let's keep going. We have Artemis, who's also known as a god with three personalities. That's not necessarily good, actually. Yeah, very unpredictable. Aphrodite, the goddess of love, also unpredictable. If you'll ask me, we got Hermes, Ares, and Mars. I've mentioned earlier. Now let's just skip them here. What we have here are the lesser gods of Olympus. So what I learned here, all of them are called the Muses. You have the Muses, the Graces, and everybody else. So what I learned going through these parts is that the Greeks have gods and goddesses for almost everything. Almost everything. I think it explains how philosophical they are and how they try to use their thoughts, their minds to tackle the realities of life by personifying them. Yeah, the gods of the waters, as I mentioned earlier. Uh, all right, let's just keep going. The underworld, more of Hades here. We got Cerberus and everything else. I mean, there's too many details to cover in a short video, but that's basically it. And then we have the Roman gods. Now, here's the main difference. The Greeks personified the realities of life and existence, and they have gods and goddesses for almost everything. Not all of those translated well with the Romans. The Romans are more practical. This book says they lack imagination, verbiage. But I would say the Romans are more practical. They adapted the Greek gods and goddesses and slightly modified them to their own benefit, so they're more practical. As we all know, Rome was one of the greatest empires in history. They followed shortly after the Greek Empire, and they are very war oriented. Prior to that, the Romans had gods, and they called them the Numina. It's right here, Numina. But they're not personified. They don't have names. They're basically like roles. So, for example, God of the harvest, or God or the goddess of childcare. Yeah. So like that. No names. Now they use those roles and align them with the Greek gods, and that's how they came up with the alternatives, except for Apollo and another one, because Apollo, as I mentioned earlier, is attributed to arts and sciences. And that's not military warfare nor agriculture necessarily, as the Romans saw it. So they kind of took Apollo for granted. But everybody else, they got covered. And they also have Faunus, who was Saturn's or Cronus's grandson, and he's like the Roman version of Pan, the nature god. Excuse me. So yeah, Roman gods and goddesses are more military oriented and practical, as compared to the Greek gods and goddesses, who were more, literate, poetic, artistic, and intellectual, regardless if they are military oriented or not. What else do we have here? There's just more literature here. Huh. Yep. But I think I'll end it there for now because that's pretty much all about part one. This is part two, the two great gods of Earth. And I think my goal only is to cover their unlikely family tree, which is part one. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you for sticking around. Bye.